Morning, EntreGrowth community. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to join us this morning. Today, we are going to start with a video from Simon Sinek talking about the infinite game. And we're going to roll that into a conversation about what that looks like directly in our businesses and playing for a long term versus for the short term. So without further ado, here is Simon Sinek in this 10-minute video that we're going to watch this morning about playing an infinite game. I could have explained it to you myself, but hey, we might as well hear from the guy who wrote the book himself. So here we go.
In game theory, there are two kinds of games. There are finite games and there are infinite games. A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and an agreed-upon objective. Baseball. We all agree what the rules are, and at the end of 9 innings, whoever has more runs, we declare the winner, and the game is over. No one ever says, wait, if we can just play 3 more innings, I know we can come back and win. Doesn't happen. Right? You have winners and you have losers. Right? Then there is an infinite game. An infinite game is defined as known and unknown players. The rules are changeable, and the objective is to keep the game in play, to perpetuate the game. When you pit a finite player versus a finite player, the system is stable. Baseball is stable. When you pit an infinite player versus an infinite player, the system is also stable. The Cold War was stable because there can be no winners and losers. It doesn't exist. That's not a scenario we want. And so you keep the game in play to keep it stable. And in an infinite game, because there are no winners or losers, what happens is players drop out when they run out of the will or the resources to play. And then they're replaced by other players. The game perpetuates. The players change out. Problems arise when you pit a finite player versus an infinite player, because the finite player is playing to win, and the infinite player is playing to stay in the game. And the finite player will always get frustrated. They will find themselves in quagmire. This was the United States and Vietnam. We were fighting to win. They were fighting for their lives. This was the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. They were fighting to beat the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen would fight for as long as was necessary. Now, let's look at the game of business. The game of business is, by its very definition, an infinite game. It has pre-existed before every single company on this planet ever existed, and it will outlast every single company on this planet. But if you listen to the words of most companies, they don't know the game they're in. You listen to companies, they want to be number 1. Based on what metrics? Based on what time frames? Revenues? Market share? Square footage? Number of employees? Based on a quarter, a year? 5 years? 10 years? 50 years? I didn't agree to those standards. You can't suddenly just arbitrarily say we're number 1. No one else agreed to the standards. It's nonsense to beat our competition. Based on what? And they study their competition, trying to outdo their competition. And yet I've never heard of a company that's taken down by the competitors they know. They're always taken down by the competitors they don't know. Do you think MySpace knew that Facebook existed? They were worried about Friendster. You can't make strategic decisions from studying your competition. You can make tactical decisions from studying your competition, but not strategic decisions. But when you listen to the way most companies play the game, they're in the wrong game. That's why they get frustrated. The great organizations understand that they're playing to stay in the game. Jim Senegal, the founder of Costco, says Wall Street's in the business of making the quarter of the year. We're in the business of building a company for the next 50 years. The understanding of knowing what game you're in radically changes the kinds of decisions you make and the way you see the world. It is also tremendously confidence building. Let me give you a true story. I spoke at a education, that's funny. I spoke at an education summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at an education summit for Apple. At the Education Summit for Microsoft, I would say that 70% of the executives spent about 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Education Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One is playing this way, and one is playing that way. One is playing finite, and the other one is playing infinite. Guess which one gets frustrated? So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. And let me tell you, this thing was spectacular. It was the most elegant piece of technology I'd ever used. The user interface was incredible. The design was spectacular. I absolutely loved it. It was easy to use, and it was bright and gorgeous and fantastic. It didn't work on iTunes, which is a different problem, so I couldn't use it, but it was amazing. And elegant. My God, it was elegant. So I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a very senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy. And, you know, I like to stir pots. So I turned to him, I said, you know, Microsoft gave me their new Zune, and it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player understands sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. Sometimes your product is better and sometimes it's worse. The goal isn't to be the best every day. The goal isn't to outdo your competition every day. That's a finite construction. If I had said to Microsoft, I've got the new iPod Touch and it's so much better than your Zune, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? React, 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 react. Finite players play to beat the people around them. Infinite players play to be better than themselves. To wake up every single day and say, how can we make our company a better version of itself today than it was yesterday? How can we create a product this week that's better than the product we created last week? We also have to play the infinite game. It's not about being ranked #1. It's not about having more followers on Twitter than your friends. It's not about outdoing anyone. It's about how to outdo yourself. It's not about selling more books or getting more TED views than somebody else. It's about how to make sure that the work that you're producing is better than the work you produced before. You are your competition. And that is what ensures you stay in the game the longest. And that is what ensures you find joy. Because the joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement. The problem is, we're human beings, and we love to compare. We love a ranking. Oh, we love a ranking. Top 10 this, top 100 that. Oh, we love a ranking. You know? Every industry has got its own rankings, and we love to be on those rankings, even though most of the rankings are arbitrary, and you can pretty much foil most of them. You can buy your way onto most of them, right? But I'm on the list, right? They did a study, who do all the studies. They did a study where they asked people if they wanted a free $400,000 house on a block where all the other houses are $100,000, or a free $1 million house on a block where all the other houses are $4 million. Most people took the $400,000 house. We just love to be better than each other. But that is a depressing way to live a life. What I urge you to do, if you are not a millennial, is to have a little empathy for the millennials around you. They were dealt a bad hand, and unfortunately, we have to help them build their confidence, find their patience, and break the habit from their technology so that they can learn the social skills that they need to live happy, joyful lives. If you are a millennial, it's not you. And take care of the millennial friends that you have around you, because they're not mad at you and they're not bad people. They were dealt the same bad hand that you were dealt. Don't demand that they take care of you, take care of them. And that's part of the problem. There's an entire section in the bookshop called self-help, and there's no section in the bookshop called help others. And the way that we fix the problems in the world is not by trying to demand that people help us. How can I lose 10 pounds? How can I find love? How can I find the job of my dreams? That's what all the books say. No, it should be, how can I help my friend live a healthy lifestyle? How can I help my friend find a lifetime of fulfillment? That's what it's about. It's about service to others, because that's what it means to be human. Everything about our makeup, our biology and our anthropology, is designed to get us to look after each other. Everything about our makeup is designed to get us to take care of each other. That's why an event like this feels better than watching it online, because we get to sit next to each other. We get to sit with each other. It's nicer for me too. It's much nicer for me to be here with you, because we're social. But we all have a responsibility in this tribe. If you want to have a happy, successful, fulfilling, confident life, you have to commit yourself to take care of the people around you. That's just how it works.
All right, so there's no shelf called Help Others. There's a lot of shelves called self-help. I'm reminded back from one of the things that I've been taught for so long. If you want to become a master of something that you haven't become a master at yet, one of the greatest things that you can do is actually start to teach that, because you having to teach it forces you to get better at it yourself, because now you've put yourself in a position to truly help others. I like what he said there, where he said the joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement. The joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement. Now, here's what that means to me. If we're constantly looking for outside things to make us feel better, we're always going to be looking for that next thing. But if we focus internally on getting better every single day, that's something that we personally can control. We can't control the outside influences looking at us and saying, hey, congratulations, I'm giving you an award because I see what you're doing. We can control today. Here is how I am going to choose to get better. Here's how I'm going to choose to be intentional with my growth. Now, there's really kind of 5 themes that I took away from the book, The Infinite Game. And by the way, if you haven't read it, it's a great life book and a great business book. But number 1 is the importance of having a clear sense of purpose and staying true to it, even in the face of challenges. Now, this is why I say when you're going to set goals for yourself for the year, and let's say that goal is in real estate to close 36 transactions, make sure that you anchor it with why 36 transactions is important. 36 transactions so my family and I can take that vacation we've always wanted to. 36 transactions so I can put this amount of money toward my retirement and never have to worry about other people having to take care of me when I retire. Anchor it into that clear sense of purpose so that when things do get tough, you could go look at it and say, oh gosh, I know it's tough right now. And here's why I started. Here's why I signed up for those real estate classes a long time ago. Here's why I went through it, took the test, activated my license. Here's why I'm deciding to pick up the phone, even though I don't feel like it today, so that you can continue to advance yourself and move forward. Okay, the number 2 thing there is this one. The need for leaders to cultivate a culture of trust, transparency, and accountability. Now, you may not look at yourself and see yourself as a leader, but guess what? If you're breathing, you're leading somebody. There is somebody out there who's looking up to you and saying, I want what they have. I want to be like them. I see what they're doing, and it inspires me. Now, we're leading people every single day in business. And in real estate, for example, I was having a coaching conversation with one of the agents that I coach yesterday about a client who's considering pulling their home off the market because they bought their house in 2019. They have a crazy low interest rate, and they had their house listed for $389,000, and now they got an offer for $380,000 or $375,000, and their question is, do I still sell it? I wanted $389,000, $375,000 may not be worth it to me. And the infinite game came to my mind there, because I asked, well, what's the motivation for you? Is this a long-term play, or are you focused on the short-term opportunity? Is real estate going to be a long-term career for you? Do you want to build up as many deposits in the banks of the people who you're serving as you possibly can, or are you just looking for that next transaction? Well, he said, I want to make this a career. And I said, okay, well, then maybe the conversation is, because this was a couple who was now in their 80s. They have a house that's got stairs, and they're realizing, maybe we don't want to go up the stairs every single day, and I'm tired of taking care of the maintenance outside of the home. Because they have equity in their home, and because they have such a low interest rate, my question to him was, do you now use that as an opportunity to show them how they can use that property to build their wealth? If their interest rate is so low and they bought it for well below what they could sell it for today, and they could rent it for way more than what their mortgage is that the conversation that we have? Because their interest rate's so low that they have now a great amount of equity, even at the monthly level, for the mortgage payment coming in, and what the rent payment would be. There could be $1,000 extra there that could pay for a good amount of where they're going to go, to allow them to continue to have that as additional income every single month and take care of them long term. He said, well, yeah, absolutely, but how does that help me as well? And we had that conversation, and he understood, gosh, if I were to do it that way and help people to look at it from a wealth perspective, because y'all, the greatest transition of wealth is going to be happening over the next 15 to 20 years, from the boomer generation to the millennial generation. Massive transition of wealth is going to be happening over the next 15 to 20 years. We have to look at ourselves as wealth experts through real estate. And those conversations will be massively impactful long-term for you if you're willing to truly be a fiduciary and show them, here's what your actual options are. Yeah, you could sell it, but because, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you have an interest rate that is crazy low, it may be in your best financial interest to keep this as an investment property that is going to yield great things for you in the future. So, number 2, cultivating a culture of trust, transparency, and accountability. That one right there. Number 3, the value of taking calculated risks and being willing to adapt and evolve in order to stay competitive. Y'all, everything is a calculated risk. There's a risk versus a reward, and we have to look at that in every decision that we make. Not everything is going to go right. I promise you, not everything is going to go right. Yet, if you're willing to look at it and say, okay, if I make this move, here are the options that could happen from it. And I'm about 75% likely for this option to happen, and about 25% likely for this option to happen, but I want the 75% likely option to happen. Take the risk. If it makes sense and you can even deal with the 25% possibility that it's going to happen, take the risk. There's a lot of people out there who say, I don't want to door knock because they might be mean. Well, they might be. That might be 10% of them. It might be 5% of them. But 85 or 90% of them, or 95% of them, aren't going to be. It's a calculated risk. And it's that risk we have to take every single day to get out of our comfort zone, to choose to get everything we've always wanted. Number 4, the importance of building a strong team and creating a supportive environment. Y'all, we do have a team, whether we're an individual agent or not. Those people who we choose to partner with, our mortgage lenders, our title companies, our inspectors, all of those people are part of our team. Are they representing us in the same way that we want to be represented ourselves to our clients? And are we representing them in the same way that they want to be represented to their clients? Because every single person that we introduce into our business is a direct reflection of who we are. So who you choose to be in business with really does matter. We have to make sure that we're choosing great people to associate themselves with our name, because this is a long-term play for us not a short-term one. And the fifth thing is the need to embrace a long-term perspective and resist the temptation to focus solely on short-term goals. It's really easy to look at the short term and say, hey, you know what? This is a play that I can make right now. And by doing it, I'll instantly have one transaction. But there's a gentleman who I've talked about before named Dan Grebe, and Dan talked about how he realized that he was only focusing on the next transaction, the next transaction, the next transaction. And that allowed him to get to a place where he was making about $250,000 a year. But then he went back and read this little book right here called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And by the way, this is a business book. It is not just a real estate book. It can teach you how to run any business. And what he realized is he wasn't focusing on all the people he had served before. He wasn't focusing on all of the people he had served before. And if he had chosen to do that, he would have had way more business. And so he intentionally changed his business model to, yes, bring in additional brand new opportunities, and also at the same time, nurture and connect with all of those people he had done business with before. And by making that transition of serving the people who he's already helped, his referrals went through the roof, and he became a millionaire real estate agent where he was netting $1 million or more every single year in real estate. Yet up until that point where he was only focusing on the next transaction and finding that next opportunity from people who he had never met before, he was only making about $250,000 a year, only $250,000 a year. That does sound like a lot. Yet he quadrupled his business by focusing on the people who he had already had relationships with, in addition to constantly feeding his database every single day with new people. So my challenge to you guys would be this: focus on continuing to develop the relationships with the people that you have and add new relationships every single day. And remember, have a clear sense of purpose and be able to go back to that purpose as to why you chose to do this from the very beginning, so that when things get tough, you're still moving forward. All right, so what are your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, takeaways? All right, well, if there's nothing that you've got today, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. It's going to be a great call that we'll have tomorrow morning as well. And I hope you all have an absolutely incredible day. And remember, everything that you want in life is right outside of your comfort zone. Choose today to be just a little more uncomfortable than you were yesterday in order to get everything you've always wanted. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you.